Joining me now, I have Rich Rubino, political analyst and author of The Great American Political Trivia Challenge. Rich, good morning to you. So everybody's talking about this soundbite. The full interview airs on Sunday. But you hear that and you think back to when she also famously said right after the debate that she thought he did a great job. Why do you think she's coming forward with all this now?
Yeah, well, obviously that's a bit of a contradiction. I think it's interesting. I think that perhaps a better argument she could have made, she could have said something like, I saw Joe Biden, I saw his political dexterity, I saw the way he was able to shepherd legislation through Congress, like the Inflation Reduction Act, Build Back Better, the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. But she was asked questions and she answered it very directly, and it'd be very interesting to see the reaction. Obviously, I think the president would say that he had just taken a trip into Europe and to California, and that part of it was he was jet lagged, and the part of it was that he had had a cold. But it's very interesting that she took this tact.
You know, I was talking to former RNC chairwoman Ronna McDaniel last hour, and she made the argument, if you really thought your husband was having a stroke and the president of the United States was having a stroke, why not take him to the hospital?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You wonder how, the legitimacy of whether she was really necessarily thinking that. I mean, this was a very interesting debate because I think that, first of all, it was scheduled earlier than any other presidential debate in the history of the Republic, and why Joe Biden agreed to do it so early is I guess a question, and also why he did it right after he had taken those foreign trips. I think if you watched the debate, you saw him kind of giving a very much kind of a stumbling type of a performance. A lot of Americans, particularly a lot of Democrats, had wanted somebody other than Joe Biden to run for president. I think that when he ran for president the first time in 2020, the thought process in a lot of Democrats was, okay, Joe Biden will be a transitional figure, not a transmogrificational figure. So we'll have him in for 4 years. Then he'll give way to a younger Democrat, to a governor or a senator or a cabinet member or something like that. But instead, Joe Biden chose to run, and he had nominal opposition running for president, running for the Democratic nomination. But there are very many Democrats who are very lukewarm. And I think if there was somebody who was more of a formidable candidate, they may have been able to, if not upend him, they've been able to have a very strong showing in New Hampshire.
Yeah. The thing we were also talking about earlier this morning is just, this soundbite is playing, and the media is wall to wall with it, and still talking about President Biden's mental acuity. Just this week, you had President Trump go to Walter Reed for the third time in 13 months. We still haven't gotten a full medical readout of that. Is it unfair, the continued, it is bipartisan scrutiny that we're still placing on President Biden? Is that unfair, and is it time to move on?
No, I don't think so. I think as long as it's on both sides, I think that obviously if you have somebody who's the leader of the free world, if you will, and you see them having mental or physical vulnerabilities, I think there really should be a swan song. There should be a clarion call to say, what is going on with the president? What is going on with his health? Obviously, this is something that affects pretty much the whole world.
Yeah. Lastly, just timing of the sit-down interview. Again, the full thing airs on Sunday. The timing of it, at the same time that Biden is trying to block, the release of those ghostwriter, files. I know her memoir drops on June 2nd. Does any of that play into all of this?
I think I don't know, but obviously it is bad optics that this is getting into this is really saturating. That this is really saturating the news coverage. People are talking about how Joe Biden was running, and then 107 days before the election, he kind of decided he was going to drop out of the race. He was the first president, the incumbent president since Lyndon Johnson in 1968. Who could have sought his party's nomination, who did not seek his party's nomination. He was relatively unpopular, as President Johnson was at that time. So I don't think the Democrats really want Joe Biden saturating the airways. I think they want somebody who's young and vigorous, a governor, a senator, a cabinet member, somebody else to really be the face card, if you will, of the Democratic Party.
Well, we'll be watching this weekend, that's for sure. Rich Rubino, thank you as always. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay.